got now a message. I think it would be great if, yeah, please.
Peoplehood. I did an experiment with the Gov Fellows this year at ITC. We had a course titled Introduction to Jewish Peoplehood. And one of the issues with their Govs is that they, as elite group, they happen to travel a little bit. So they just had a visit to the United States, and they met a young fellow by the name of David Borovitz. David Borovitz, he is the co-chair with Inbal of the KolDor conference. Someone who has to wake up in the morning and instead of pray, just articulate the definition of peoplehood. And David told me that in his conversation with the Argov fellows, he said, well, I don't know what's peoplehood, I don't know what's this bullshit. And they said, yeah, that's also what, we don't understand what isn't in the class, what even speaks about peoplehood. I don't know if I told you this story, but for the record, he told me, unless otherwise proven. So, peoplehood, I agree with the first sentence of Shlomi that we should not define. We are in a struggle, trying not to define things, because once you define, magdir, define is magdir in Hebrew. Magdir comes from the word gader. It means that you put a certain fence, which means that once there is a definition, something for that side of the fence and something for the other side of the fence. This is why we didn't, under the concept of inclusiveness, in KolDor we didn't want to define peoplehood, but rather to describe it. And recently in the Jaffe General Assembly, I said there that as far as I learned, because my Argov students came back and I got this message that they don't understand what is peoplehood, that I have to be a bit more practical or clear. So I think that there are 5 pillars.
5 pillars.
Five pillars that build. Well.
It's been 2 months.
Yeah.
They expanded the building, so now they
exactly. I realized that there are more Jews than I thought. So the concept of peoplehood as the organizing principle for the Jewish people for the 21st century is the concept of peoplehood comprised of built on 5 pillars. One is the halakha. The halakha is moving forward. The Jewish halakha. Today, mainly the feminist approach, which challenges some of the fundamentals of the halakha, might become one of the most interesting leapfrog of the halakha in the 21st century as the constant evolution of the halakha. The second pillar is the famous Jewish culture. Why big incorporates from gefilte fish to Yehuda Amichai. The third one is Israel, or Neo-Zionism, what we call, which means that I believe that the concept of people, every Jew in the world should find the right avenues, the appropriate avenues to connect with Israel, not necessarily by making aliyah, not necessarily by making physical aliyah. And I quote here Yechezkel Dor, in the era of weapons of mass destruction, it will be one of the most stupid things to concentrate all the Jews in one place. So not necessarily physical aliyah, but engagement with Israel is the third pillar. That's Neo-Zionism. We should not be afraid of saying it. The fourth pillar is Hebrew. Unfortunately, we are not there yet. עברית היא צריכה להיות השפה של העם היהודי. וכל יהודי בעולם צריך לפחות להיות מסוגל להבין יהודי אחר שמדבר בעברית. לפחות להבין. I call it communicational Hebrew. And then we have conversational Hebrew, a bit more advanced, and we have philosophical Hebrew, that we were able to think in Hebrew, not necessarily all the Jews. אבל לפחות שהעברית היא שפתו של העם היהודי ולהחיות אותה גם בקרב היהודים שלא חיים בישראל. And the fifth pillar is תיקון עולם. The Jewish people should start perform as the leader of the world in terms of ethic and values, without blinking when saying it. Yes, we led the world and we should lead the world. So the concept of Tikkun Olam, I believe, is the fifth pillar of peoplehood. Described, not defined.
Thank you. So I started to agree with Shlomi and then Mati about not defining it. It sounded to me, Mati, that you were starting to define what the aspects of peoplehood, and the fine line between defining and describing, I think, is something that we could talk about more. But I would actually argue that, and perhaps this is sort of a paradox, but that in a way the definition of peoplehood is a definition that allows it to be fully inclusive. That on one hand, defining something does limit it, but with peoplehood, I mean, one of the things, I think the most sort of special thing about the term peoplehood, at least in terms of bringing the Jewish people together around shared values, visions, but what it does is, in a sense, it preserves and respects unity, but also respects and welcomes diversity. So you have this ability to have a unifying concept that also respects the different diverse expressions of Jewish life that would come inside of it. So I also am playing with that same thing. I mean, I agree with the sort of suggestion that we shouldn't begin to define what the term peoplehood means, but we could define it as a fully inclusive term that includes many different kinds of expression. The other defining factor that I would say, and this was talked about, I actually read an interesting article by Michael Rosener, a philosopher, who discusses the difference between the descriptive and the proscriptive or the prescriptive, right? And he talks about how if you can't define peoplehood and look at peoplehood just as a descriptive thing, these people and their history went through the same traumas, went through the same tragedies, and therefore they're lumped together in a group. That's sort of like a dead way to look at peoplehood. It's kind of a reaction to external factors, to objective things that are happening to the group, but rather that peoplehood in its very essence needs to be prescriptive, needs to be something which part of the definition is a vision. So when Mati walked in and said, "Tonight we're writing the vision for the Jewish people," I was very glad. We started. Excellent. The last thing I'd like to say is something I also heard recently in a panel, I think that Shlomi moderated at a conference of Jewish community centers, Barry Schraig's book. This is something that Barry Schraig is the director of the Federation in Boston, and it's something that stuck with me. He said, when I think about peoplehood, I think about, I compare it to terms like friendship and love. It's hard to define exactly what it is and how to get there, but when you get there, you feel it. And I think that for me really said something. It's hard to describe it, but there's something sort of experiential about getting there. And I think, I'll stop here for now, but I think that, at least what I'd like to talk about in this conversation is when we talk about building and when we talk about getting there and that feeling, is we need to really discuss the experiential dynamic, how to bridge groups of people who are otherwise different, how to make people feel connected, and how do we, building on what Shlomi said, how do we begin to build it?